Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, 402. Come. Oh, yeah, plug this in.
आपको लिंक भेज दिया लिंक भेज दिया सैंडल लिंक मैं टाइम तो लग रही हूँ
Does that disappear after a while, or is
लिंक
it
भेज
just part
दो
of the screen?
That's a part of the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just shows up.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's just the damaged part. Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's damaged.
Yeah. No,
That was a logo.
no, bro.
It only shows up on the light.
ऐसे नहीं अटकेगा ये वाला क्योंकि रॉन्ग साइड है और नहीं उसको नहीं घुमाना स्क्रीन नहीं घुमानी नहीं घुमानी वीडियो उसी तरह
Hello? Gaurav is coming? I'm not. Is he coming tonight? Gaurav? Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namah Let's say, Namo
Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarne Sarvabharati. And if you don't know it, that means I better translate what it means. Welcome back. It means I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who was very dear to Lord Krishna on this earth, having taken shelter at the Lord's lotus feet. Our respectful obeisances are unto you, O spiritual master, servant of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You are so kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya, and especially in the Western countries, so filled with impersonalism and voidism. So if you don't know, Srila Prabhupada is the spiritual master of the Hare Krishna movement, and he represents a 500-year-old line of teachers coming from Krishna's avatar as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who has never heard of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Anyone? You've heard? You know. You from Bengal? A little bit. Most people, at least in Bengal and Orissa, know Mahaprabhu. Around India, more people know Sita Ram. It's more popular, actually. So, we're having a seminar series on a book called The Nectar of Instruction. This is Srila Prabhupada's translation and commentary on a book by one of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's associates, Srila Rupa Goswami, who penned the book somewhere around 1550s, something like that. And then Prabhupada in 1975, he translated this into English. This is a primer. It's a step-by-step instructional manual on how to practice Bhakti Yoga, Krishna Bhakti. So we're up to lesson 5. There's only 11 texts in the whole book, but it's a really concise look at how to practice Krishna Bhakti. So this is one of the later lessons. It presumes, of course, that you've read the other lessons. If you haven't, but we'll do our best to make it a little understandable. The lesson is called Accelerating Spiritual Advancement, and it's based on material from text 5, 7, and 8. So let me come up here where the script is. Any questions so far? Where in India are you from? This fellow, you're from near Pune, you said. Okay. Gujarat. Punjab. Kerala. Okay, this is all over the map. And Karnataka. I spent a couple of years there. And Gujarat. Okay. And we have Delhi represented over here.
Majority.
The hosts. And I'm from New York City, so what do I know? Okay. I'm going to put my glasses on here, because if I ever do this again, I'm going to print it a little bigger. It's a little small for my aging eyes. Okay, accelerating. This is Prabhupada walking in San Francisco, Golden Gate Park, 1967, near one of his favorite ponds or lakes, called Stowe Lake. Has anybody been to Golden Gate Park?
On the bridge, not the park.
No, okay, you've been on the bridge, right? Yeah, the park is beautiful, Golden Gate. And it's right near the first ISKCON temple. 1967, the devotees established a temple in the Haight-Ashbury section where it was all happening those days. 518 Frederick Street. Okay, so let's look at the last lesson, those of you who were here. All right. Lesson 4 review. We call 3 levels of devotees and their characteristics. So we looked at an Uttamadikari. What's a characteristic of an Kanishta Adhikari?
Kanishta Adhikari who has given Harinam,
Just there's 3 levels of Kanishta. So just do the one that's sincere.
The Prakat Sahajya.
No.
That was the lowest.
That's
Sorry.
this is about Kanishta, Madhya, Uttam. So just do the basic sincere.
So the Kanishta devotee chants the holy name, but also he doesn't follow the four regulative
No,
principles.
that's the lowest level of Kanishta. Just give me the highest level of Kanishta, who is initiated, and what's he doing?
Yeah, he serves the Lord, but he doesn't
He just
develop relationships
he
with
just
the
sees
devotees.
God in
No,
the
that's
lady.
the middle one.
That's
Sorry, this
Madhya.
is too complicated. The one who's the best, who's moving.
He just sees the God in Krishna in the deity form.
Yeah,
And
right. It's hard for him to relate to Krishna being in everyone's heart and to speak of serving others. And he's chanting, he's following his vows, he's chanting 16 rounds on the beads, he's observing the regulative principles. Okay, so then what's the next level?
Madhyama.
Madhyamadikari, what is he like?
He has faith in Guru and Krishna.
He serves Guru and Krishna 16 rounds.
Follows the rules. He has faith in Guru and Krishna. Where does he see Krishna?
In everyone's heart, and he can
Well,
distinguish.
that's like Uttam.
The Guru and Krishna.
Uttamadikari.
So it will be only in Guru and Krishna he thinks like
And
salvation.
what is he? He makes 4 distinctions.
Oh.
Between the envious, he can distinguish the envious people.
Right, he tries to worship the Supreme Lord, makes friends with,
Friendly towards devotees,
preaches to the
merciful
The-
to
the
the
new people.
neophytes,
innocent,
and
right?
avoid the
Avoid the
envious to
envious
the
people.
devotees.
Good. And then the highest level of devotee is called
Uttamadikari.
Uttamadikari. Uttam, the best. And what is he like?
He does not make any distinctions.
He
He
sees
feels he's
Krishna
the-
everywhere,
The soul in everybody's heart.
and he actually thinks that everybody's serving Krishna but him.
Yeah.
He sees
And he
nobody.
can preach anywhere, like.
And when he preaches, what does he do?
He comes to the level of
He comes
Madhyam.
down to the level of making distinctions so that he can
Preach.
help people understand what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad. Okay. And so we call 3 kinds of neophyte devotees, and so now we're going to just deal with those Kanishta Adhikaris. There's 3 levels. What's the lowest level of Kanishta?
Prakarta Sahaji.
Prakrita Sahajya means what?
They chant Hare Krishna, but casually, but they are
But they are
attached
attached
to
to money.
money and wine.
Yeah, they don't follow any principles.
No principles.
It's sentimental.
Has faith that Krishna is God.
They believe, they understand Krishna's God, but they don't follow the disciplines of bhakti. And the next level up from Sahajya is
They-
Prakarta Bhakta.
Prakrita Bhakta, materialistic devotees, so we just mentioned.
Which
Oh no, excuse me, Prakrita Sahajya, and then what's the next?
Prakarta
Prakrita
Bhakta.
Bhakta.
Prakrita Bhakta, so
He follows the regulative principles. He chants 16 rounds.
Only serve Guru and Krishna.
But he feels like he's the best devotee.
well, he doesn't chance. He's not quite at the level of having taken vows yet, but he's working in that
Not
direction.
initiated, but he's still chanting.
He's chanting, and he's working on the principles. He's working on rounds.
He has faith in Guru and Krishna.
He has faith, but his faith isn't strong enough yet to formally commit to the disciplines of bhakti. And finally, the best kind of neophyte is,
Harinam Bhakta.
yeah, he's actually chanting Hare Krishna to the level of 16 rounds,
16 rounds. Follow 4 rules.
4 regulative principles, and he
serves the
Serve
Guru,
Guru,
Krishna, and the
serves Guru, and
Vaishnavas.
he's moving up toward the next
Madhya
stage.
level.
Right. Recall how to see a devotee internally, not externally. What was that all about?
Like that was basically
This color and creed and, the form,
Yeah.
whatever they are.
Yeah,
Yes.
if they have some body defect or
Yeah.
something like
They shouldn't
And
be
not
criticized.
not to
No
identify
bond.
them with their background, with their
No
previous
You
background.
don't judge a
Sinful
book by its
activities.
cover. You don't measure somebody, his devotion by his background,
External appearances.
external appearances, right? Like to this day, there are still caste Goswamis in India who won't accept our Western-born sannyasis as authentic devotees just because they were born in the West. It's called caste Goswami, right? Caste conscious. Okay, so good. So that's the review. Developing attachment and love. What does it mean to advance? Because the title of the slide was Accelerating Spiritual Advancement. So what is this? What does it mean to advance? Anybody know?
Basically, trying to develop the love.
Yeah, you will. If somebody's advanced, what do you think of somebody being advanced?
Advance means like he is more merciful toward the living entity.
Yeah?
And he's more attached to Krishna.
That's good.
That
Here it
makes
is.
it
Okay, Manager, you read that. Read this.
Prati Prematata Tamye Bhakta Tara Tama. A devotee is considered superlative or superior according to his attachment and love.
Yeah, mainly to Krishna. And then he can love everyone as Krishna's sons and daughters. Good. Okay, so let's see here. And there's more to that. Gaur Prabhu, want to read that?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh. In his Bhakti Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami comments on Diksha, spiritual initiation thus. By Diksha, one gradually becomes disinterested in material enjoyment and gradually becomes interested in spiritual life.
Mm-hmm. So, sometimes people take initiation from a spiritual master, but it's just superficial. Diksha is like a second birth. We're all born once from our mother, right? And then, like the Christians have this concept, being born again. But what's the symptom of being born again? Is that you're actually transformed, you're changed. Like our Srila Prabhupada, when he met his spiritual master in Calcutta in 1922, he said, I accepted him as my spiritual master immediately. Not officially, that means the ceremony, right? But in my heart. Now Prabhupada met his Guru Maharaj in 1922. What year did he take initiation? Anybody know?
33.
That's right. It wasn't for 11 years that he took formal Diksha. But he said, Prabhupada said, I accepted as my spiritual master immediately. Not officially, but in my heart. If there's any meaning to the ceremony, it's that the transformation has already taken place. The official ceremony should only be a formal recognition of the change that's already taken place in the heart. For example, before Prabhupada met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Prabhupada said, I was following Gandhi. I was a Gandhi devotee. And then when he met Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, you are a nice educated young man. Why don't you spread Krishna consciousness all over the world? He just said that out of the blue, apropos of nothing that he'd ever. So Prabhupada, because he was following Gandhi, he immediately came back with, well, we are a captive nation. We're still under the boot of the British Raj. Who will listen to Chaitanya's message? And so that was his kind of stock reply whenever someone would try to get him interested in a spiritual movement. He was already involved with Gandhi's movement. But then Srila Bhaktisiddhanta came back right away with, oh no, Krishna consciousness is too important to wait for a change in politics. It's the urgent need of every living being. So Prabhupada was struck with wonder. This was the first time he's ever heard an answer to his Gandhi identity. And immediately his allegiance flew from his heart, from Gandhi right to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And then he told us later, he said, I wanted to join him immediately, but I was already a married man, I already had a child, wife and child. It would have been an injustice. He was responsible. He wasn't going to run away from his family. So his strategy was, I'll become a wealthy businessman, as was predicted in the stars. And then with my accumulated wealth, when the family business is wound down, when the kids are moved away, the kids are grown up, then with my accumulated fortune, I will do the mission. So that was what Prabhupada tried to do. But Krishna had other plans. Krishna made Prabhupada spiritually wealthy later on. Well, always, but it manifested later on. Yes. So the sign of somebody having really taken Diksha, really being initiated, is that his consciousness has changed. And that he's moving toward God now, and he's not moving toward self-centered goals anymore. Okay, so that's one thing. Here we go. Yeah, there's Srila Rupa Goswami. He's the author of the book we're studying. Okay, let's see. Manaji, you want to read?
Unless one gets this spiritual encouragement by following the instructions of the spiritual master, it is not possible to make advancement. Therefore, one's development of a taste for executing these instructions is the test of one's devotional service.
It's very fashionable in the modern age to think we don't need a guide, a guru. I can do it myself. I don't need an intermediary. But it's so dishonest, because just think about it. Even to learn how to tie our shoes, who teaches us? Our mother, right? Our guru ma. Or to learn like your mathematics teacher. So you need she's a teacher. If people want to learn math, okay, they can get some books and try to figure it out. But ultimately, you need somebody who's further advanced on the path, right? Or you can think of any field, whether it's medicine or law or anything. It's natural that we need guides. And what does it say? Therefore, one's development of a taste for executing these instructions is the test of one's devotional service. So when we actually serve the instructions of the guide, of the spiritual master in this case, then that's a test of advancement. Otherwise, we're not really getting anywhere if we're perpetually living in our own heads and going around in circles. Okay, here we go. Developing attachment and love. Accept an Uttama Adhikari as guru. Gets a little esoteric here for our guests. We're just sort of coming in to this late in the game. But Uttama Adhikari, again, what's the symptom of an Uttama Adhikari?
He sees Krishna everywhere,
He's Krishna
but
everywhere.
for preaching he does come to the level of Madhyamadhikari,
Right?
where he makes
He
a
can
distinction.
preach anywhere.
And how does he feel? How is his faith? Strong, right?
Strong, very strong.
And how is his knowledge? Strong,
Yes.
right? Uttam means he's the topmost
He can
qualification.
argue with anybody. Like,
Yeah, he
because
can,
he's spiritually very
right, he
strong.
can answer any question. He's qualified like that. So it says right here in Nectar of Instruction, let me see if I can, yeah, oh, there it is. Okay, I don't have to turn to it, it's right there. So, Prabhu, you want to read that?
Developing attachment and love. Accept an Uttamadhikari as Guru. A neophyte Vaishnava or a Vaishnava situated on the intermediate platform can also accept disciples, but such disciples must be on the same platform, and it should be understood that they cannot advance very well toward the ultimate goal of life under his insufficient guidance. Therefore, a disciple should be careful to accept an Uttamadhikari as a spiritual master.
Okay, so we know when Srila Prabhupada started ISKCON, we know he's an Uttamadhikari, a devotee on the highest levels of bhakti. Hare Krishna. Ah, Gaurav Prabhu. Yes. Bring me.
Shubi.
Shubi. I did that last time. I knew it's E, something E. Yeah, please. Good to see you. Anyone? So when Srila Prabhupada started the Hare Krishna movement, he was walking among us for 12 years, from 1965 to 1967. And then he passed on. That's 42 years ago. Now, post-Prabhupada, quote unquote, people are carrying on initiating disciples, but who are we to say who's on what level? And so it becomes a little problematic in some people's minds. If it says in Nectar of Instruction that I can only advance if I have an Uttama Adhikari for a guru, and I mean nobody's on Prabhupada's level, so what to do? So for the answer, let's go to some historical piece of information from our spiritual forefather, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And he's going to...
There's a little thing that probably like here it said like, no, therefore a disciple should be careful to accept an Uttamadhikari as a spiritual master.
Yeah, that's what we're discussing. How do we do that? Because we don't know necessarily who's an Uttama Adhikari. Although they're interesting you ask that, because you'll find in Prabhupada's books, not just about this issue, but about practically anything, very high and strict definitions, and then you'll find very lenient, generous definitions. So there's not one answer. to what an Uttama Adhikari even is.
But Pro, it says insufficient guidance also. Like, does that mean that, like, even Prabhupada, when he was a spiritual master,
No, read the previous sentence. You got to start from the beginning. A neophyte Vaishnava or a Vaishnava situated on the intermediate platform, that's Madhyam, right?
Mhm.
It says, can also accept disciples, but such disciples must be on the same, in other words, they're only going to advance as far as that Madhyam is advanced. And it should be understood that the Madhyam's disciples, they, cannot advance very well toward the ultimate goal of life under the Madhyam Guru's insufficient guidance. So that's the insufficient guidance means, unless we're actually connected with an Uttam Guru who's really intimately connected to Krishna, we're not going to go the distance. We're not going to go all the way back to Godhead. So therefore, Prabhupada writes, a disciple should be careful. In this case it means an aspiring disciple. A disciple should be careful to accept an Uttama Adhikari as a spiritual master. But who is the Uttama Adhikari? Now that Prabhupada's left our vision. Well, one answer is that according to a very liberal, lenient definition of the Adhikaris, is that a Kanishta Adhikari, he doesn't have much faith, and he's not very learned, so he's shaky. He's on a shaky platform. And then the Madhyam, he can't necessarily convince others of Krishna being the absolute truth, but he has firm faith. He knows Krishna is the absolute truth. He's not very good at explaining to others or persuading others of that. And an Uttam Adhikari, by this definition scheme, his faith is strong, and his knowledge is strong. He can convince others, and his faith is... So by that measure, we have so many devotees in this movement who actually have demonstrated that, not just Prabhupada. But there's other definitions of Uttam which are really up there, high, and that we'd be very reluctant necessarily to say that so-and-so is an Uttam is the best, on the highest level of bhakti. But I want to go to the next slide because, did I answer that?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to, because I want to solve this even by the strict definition of Uttam. What does it mean that we have to accept an Uttama Adhikari as a spiritual master? According to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, our spiritual ancestor, let's see, who's going to read this one? Arun, can you read that?
The devotee must understand that the
Adyacharya,
original spiritual master of the Sampradaya, is Shiksha Guru, and only his teachings are to be accepted and not those of any other scholar or teacher. And only a saintly devotee who has understood the teachings of the Shiksha Guru is eligible to be Diksha Guru for others.
Okay, so first of all, Adyacharya. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Bengali word for what we now call founder Acharya. The Adi Acharya, Adyacharya. So who's the Adyacharya of ISKCON? Prabhupada. Right. And so you follow the logic here. Prabhupada's he's the Uttam. He's the, it says, let's see. Oh, this doesn't work. And only a saintly devotee who has understood the teachings of the Shiksha Guru. So let's go to the next slide. Radhika, read that.
To fulfill the previous Acharya's desire for a united worldwide preaching organization to expand Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission, Srila Prabhupada founded ISKCON as a distinct branch of the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya. Therefore, he is the founder Acharya of ISKCON.
And then, read that.
Srila Prabhupada is the foundational Shiksha Guru for all ISKCON devotees because he has realized and presented the teachings of the previous Acharyas of the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Sampradaya appropriately for the modern age.
And that's item A of many points in a statement by the GBC in 1994. In other words, they're saying, look, Prabhupada's the founder Acharya. That doesn't just mean he's somebody from the past, but he's actually the foundational Shiksha Guru, instructional guru of all devotees in ISKCON for all generations, regardless of who one's Diksha Guru is. So by accepting that, by understanding that, realizing that, accepting that, we are connected with an Uttam. Prabhupada's the Uttam. And it's said in that, Prabhupada said in the last, let's see, and only a saintly devotee who has understood the teachings of the Shiksha Guru is eligible to be a Diksha Guru for others. So devotees in our organization, for example, if they do accept and practice and live the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, and they're initiating disciples, they're connecting their disciples with Srila Prabhupada. That's the business of an initiating guru today. Enhance and enrich their disciples' connection with the foundational guru. So that's how we're all Uttam. Yeah, okay. Let's see here. Okay. So now that we know who our foundational guru is, let's look at Prabhupada's instructions. Who would like to read? Someone read? Can you see?
You can come a little bit if you want.
Can you?
I can see. There are many regulative principles in the Shastras and directions given by the Guru. These regulative principles should act as servants of the basic principle, that is, one should always remember Krishna and never forget him.
So that's the overarching, that's the foundational instruction. But always remember Krishna, never forget him. Now to reach that, to access that state of consciousness, here, read this. Okay. Read it.
This chanting of 16 round is absolutely necessary if one wants to remember Krishna and not forget him. Of all the regulative principles, the spiritual master's order to chant at least 16 round is most essential.
Now look at it. He's writing it in CC Madhya. He was 1974, basically. Prabhupada was translating CC, and he was also, as he was traveling that year, you can hear on the recordings him saying things like, "So I'm traveling all over the world, and I'm simply requesting, chant 16 rounds, please," and still you cannot do it. So why is he emphasizing it? It's because people were having a hard time chanting and fulfilling their vows, chanting 16 rounds. And that's the way we come to that state of always remembering Krishna, never forget him. That's the most effective way of reaching topmost Krishna consciousness. Okay, so that's most essential order. Now here's text 7. Finally we're going to come to the two texts. So, should we chant together?
Yes.
Sya
Krishna Nama Charita Disitapya Vidya Pito Padapta Rasanasya Narochikanu Kintva Adaranu Kalo Saiva Justa Swadvi Praman Bhavati Tadgadamula Mantri.
I would like to read. Hey, Hare Krishna. Here are my patrons. They fed me a wonderful lunch. Alright? Vivendra, you want to read that? Translation, just the English.
The holy name, character, pastimes and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root.
Rupa Goswami is giving us a very interesting analogy. If we catch jaundice, which sometimes, especially when we go to India, sometimes we do, at least in the old days, it's a little better now. But, so what's the cure for jaundice?
Sugarcane.
Sugar, yeah, something sweet. But how does the patient taste that?
Bitter.
It's bitter because of the condition of the liver, I believe. Jaundice affects it, yeah. But the cure for the jaundice is to keep taking that bitter tasting sugar cane. So similarly, when we first chant Hare Krishna, maybe seems like a big chore to chant 16 rounds. We don't have much of a taste because our mind is wandering all over the place. We don't necessarily even hear what we're chanting. Right? Our tongue is on automatic pilot, and the mind, we just let our mind go everywhere. And maybe we watch the Super Bowl, right? While we're chanting Hare Krishna, we're actually really interested in the Super Bowl, but in the background going Hare Krishna, Hare. That's kind of useless, right? Because it's building inattention into the very act of chanting. So, but the Rupa Goswami says it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue, and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. The disease of forgetfulness of Krishna, because we actually get a taste for chanting. Yeah. Okay, so then I ask here, as a stubborn case of jaundice may slow the return of sugar candy sweetness, what may slow our relish of chanting the Lord's sweet names? Are we doomed from here for so many years to just be chanting without any taste? What's slowing my developing a taste down?
Offenses.
Well, that's a good start. Let's go to the next. You win the prize of reading the next slide. Okay, the next few slides. There's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the writer of Harinama Chintamani. So you want to read that?
Yeah. The holy name, like the sun, dispels the darkness of illusion. However, sometimes clouds or mist cover the sun from the viewer, so that only a portion of light comes through. In the same way, when ignorance and anarthas predominate, the sun of the holy name becomes covered, and only a portion of the full effect of the name is felt. Harinam Chintamani.
Yeah. So now we have another analogy. It's compared to clouds. Ignorance is compared to clouds that cover our real hearing. There's more to this. Go ahead.
When the serious student takes shelter of a bona fide guru, by force of his effective spiritual practices, he can remove the obstructions blocking the sun of the holy name. When the clouds and mist go away, the brilliant sun of the name becomes visible and bestows upon the devotee the treasure of love of God. And in that position, he continues his performance of chanting the holy name in full spiritual bliss.
Right. So when we chant Hare Krishna under the guidance of the spiritual master, we can clear up those offenses. We can catch ourselves. We become conscious of our wandering mind. Right in the Gita, Krishna says, Yato nischalati. You know this? Manas chanchalam mastiram tatastatonayam yaita atmanyava pashanyaye. Which means, this is 7:26. From whatever and wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. So Krishna knows, he understands that when we sit down to chant Hare Krishna, or when we chant Hare Krishna wherever we chant, the mind's going to instantly wander. The mind is going to want to just go to the movies and just think of other things, right? But when we learn the art and science of serving Krishna under the expert guidance of the spiritual master, then we catch the mind, and more we can bring it back to the sweet sound of Krishna's names. Alright? And then, let's see. Mataji, you want to read? What's your name?
Meter.
Mita?
Yeah.
Mita, Mataji, you want to read that?
Krishna Shurya Sama Maya Haya Andhakara Yahan Krishna Taha Nahi Mayara Adhikara.
Means?
Krishna is compared to sunshine and Maya is compared to darkness. Wherever there is sunshine, there cannot be darkness. As soon as one takes Krishna consciousness, the darkness of illusion, the influence of the external energy, will immediately vanish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Godhead is light, nescience is darkness. Where there is Godhead, there can be no nescience. So, and there is a picture of Krishna in his singing and dancing golden avatar form, Lord Chaitanya. Now let's look at this in visual form. Sometimes we need visual aids to help us understand these different points. 3 stages in chanting. Alright, here we go. clicking because, yeah, it's not, whoop, I just clicked too far. All right, so first of all, we're in darkness, and that's compared to like animal consciousness. Practically, we're not even humans if we're not even at least asking, is there a God, right? And then the technical Sanskrit term for the next higher stage is namaparad, means we're offending the name, but that's to be understood because we have all this residual ignorance coming from so many births, ignorant births. And then the name starts to dawn on us. We start to get a taste for the name. I want to just click this. No, I don't think all these features came in. Anyway, so the name is, first of all, we're in the offensive stage. We're just not even aware of our ignorance. And then we begin to clear. Nama Bas. And that's called the clearing stage. When, like in Mayapur, when I'm chanting my rounds in Mayapur, and it's first of all, it's very misty outside because it's very early. And so then around, in the winter, if I look out around 6:30, 6:45, I look toward the east, and I start seeing the horizon pink. Starts getting pink. But there's a lot of, maybe, depends on the day, but say it's a cloudy day, the sun is being filtered through this clouds, and it looks very pink. And then the sun rises, and the mist, the clouds start dissipating. The sun starts kicking it out, starts evaporating it. And then it turns to, let's see, from pink to copper, like a reddish, coppery color. And then finally, by the end of Bhagavatam class, around 9 a.m., you look out and there's no more mist. It's gone. And that's compared to the top part. Full manifestation of sun, Shuddhanam, pure stage. It's kind of like that. When we take up Krishna Bhakti, at first we're kind of like trying to get our bearings, and our consciousness is kind of cloudy and confused. But then as we hear the names, and as we hear Krishna's wisdom, and we serve, everything gets clearer and clearer and clearer, if we're actually applying ourselves correctly to the science. Okay, plus 3 stages in chanting. Then, you see the overarching theme is still developing attachment and love. And now here's another sub-theme. Guru's next most essential order. If the most essential is to chant 16 rounds, then the next most essential is also very important. So, let's see. Name again. Shubhi. Can you read that?
We can read this verse together, Prabhu.
Okay.
No? Good.
Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Vayasara Sangha Krishna Prema Janmite Namuna means
The root cause of devotional service to Lord Krishna is association with advanced devotees, even when one's dormant
means sleeping, dormant.
love for Krishna awakens. Association with devotees is still most essential.
We've been talking about this practically every lesson, the power and the crucial importance of association of devotees. And why do we say that? Why is it so important, association of devotees? Because we are tiny, and we reflect our association. A person is known by the company one keeps. We just become like our... Who was it? What did Gandhi say? He said, watch your thoughts, they become your... No, not yet. They become your...
Speech.
Yeah. Watch your speech, it becomes
Your
your
actions.
Your actions. Watch your actions, they become your
Habit.
habit. He said habit, and sometimes you see character. It's the same idea. Watch your habit, it becomes your... You know what the last one was?
Your reputation, basically.
Well, it becomes your destiny, he said.
Yes.
Yeah, and it all starts with the thoughts, right? Thinking, feeling, willing. It's a progression. So, who we hang out with, who we hang with in the American vernacular, really determines a lot of how we end up. You want to know me? Look at my friends. So it's really important. Prabhupada would say to us, association of devotees is 90% of Krishna consciousness. And especially advanced devotees bring us up, bring us to a clearer point, bring us to a deeper point of love. It doesn't ultimately mean just hanging out with devotees and talking about politics or whatever. It means associating. Remember the 3 ways we associate? You mentally honor. Yesterday we had you mentally honor anybody who's just chanting Hare Krishna. We think, oh, this is nice. And then we offer respectful obeisance to somebody who's actually committed to the path. And then we faithfully serve somebody who's really an advanced devotee. So how we associate, it depends too on the people that we're with, on the level of devotee. Okay, so the most essential is chanting 16 rounds, and the next most essential is associate. Very good. So we're getting there. And this is all helping. This is all in the service of developing attachment and love. And this is another effect of associating with advanced devotees. Let's do the famous verse from the Bhagavatam. You ready? Satam prasamdan namavirya samvido bhavanti vinkarna vasayana katah tajyochana dashma bhavarga vargani shradharati bhakti anupamishyati. This is the one. Ritu.
In the association of pure devotees, discussion of the pastimes and activities of Krishna is very pleasing and satisfying to the ear and heart. By cultivating such knowledge, one gradually becomes advanced on the path of liberation, and thereafter is freed and his attraction becomes fixed. Then real devotion and devotional service begin.
It's very sweet when we have things like sadhu sangha. Who's been to sadhu sangha and boom? Okay. In the association of some pretty amazing devotees, yeah? They fly in from all over the world and bless us with their kirtan or classes. And all of a sudden we're like in a very high place. You know, we're closer to Krishna, and it's amazing because we're not used to being there. It's like a whole enlightening experience. And this is what Lord Kapila says, that this is, it's so sweet to hear about Krishna in that kind of association. Yeah. So, okay. All right. Now where are we going from here? Let's see. Oh, I'm behind. Any questions so far? That we'll just wait for the end.
Prabhu,
Yeah.
one thing one may say, like how we can find out like whether a person is advanced or not. Like anyone can.
Well, that's one reason why we read. There are symptoms mentioned in the scriptures, and in his commentaries, Prabhupada makes it crystal clear. The symptoms of somebody who's actually close to Krishna. It's not just some vague, sentimental, oh, he's so advanced, When Guruji looked at me, I got an electric shock. And, it's not like that. It's very inspiring to be in the company of somebody who's close to Krishna, advanced. So, and it's always confirmed by the Shastras and the Sadhus. We have this spiritual triangle, right? Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. It's like when they build railroad trestles. I don't know if they still do, but you notice the triangular rigid shape gives it a very strong architectural configuration. So we have the same thing spiritually. We have Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And they all corroborate, they all verify one another. There's no contradiction. Okay. Okay, so let's chant text 8. Alright? Chandana Rupa Charitari Kirtanam
Nanu smrityo pramena rasana manasi niyojya tishtam rajeta anuragi jananugami kalam nayeta kinam upadesha saram.
Notice I highlighted Upadesha Saram because in the English it's translated as the first few words of this English here, the essence of all advice. It's the last word in the Sanskrit, because as you know, as you probably know, in Sanskrit, it's not so much about the order of the words. In English, word order is everything. The syntax, the arrangement of the words to determine meaning. But in Sanskrit, it's all about the word endings. It's not so much the position of the words. So the last words in this Sanskrit shlok happen to be the first words of the English translation. Let's do it together. The essence of all advice is
that
one should
one should
utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendent form, qualities, and eternal pastimes, thereby gradually engaging one's thought and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braja, Golok Vrindavan, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees, who are deeply attached to his devotional service. Now we're really getting up there in the advice of Srila Rupa Goswami. He's telling us that when we really are ready and when we're really advanced, we have to take shelter of personal friends of Krishna, right? But that's not cheaply done. That's not easily done. And that's what we're going to unpack that right now. This is what the Sahajas do. They say, oh look, in text 8 of Upadeshamrita, it says we should just run to Vrindavan and we just have to take shelter of somebody in the mood of Nanda Maharaj. And it's premature. Before you can do that, yeah, that's definitely a goal. But it's a lot of purification has to happen before one is to authentically do that. So let's look at that. Applying Rupa Goswami's Upadesh. So it's all in the application, right? It's all in how you do it. So who'd like to read that? I want to ask you to read, but I forgot your name again. Yeah, what's your name?
Kusum. I have my eyes.
Kusum. Yeah, why can't I remember that?
Yes,
And you got your eyeglasses.
I know, but my eyes keep watering, I don't know.
Oh, wow, you're
Thank you.
experiencing ecstatic symptoms.
Right.
All right, who's in the back there? Could you read? Yes. What's your name?
Suvarna.
Suvarna. Okay. I saw your name in the airport in Bangkok.
Yes, the Bangkok
Suvarna Bhumi.
Suvarnabhumi Airport, yes.
Did they name it after you? Wow, we have a famous guest here. I'm only joking. Please read that.
Developing attachment and love. Applying Sri Rupa Goswami's Upadesha. Sorry.
Applying the essence of all. How do we do that? Essence of all advice. Okay, go ahead.
We must always remember, however, that such eagerness to follow in the footsteps of the
Denizens, it means residents.
is not possible unless one is free from material contamination. When one is actually spontaneously attracted to the loving principles of the gopis, there will be found no trace of any mundane contamination in his character.
So what is this contamination? It means making myself the center. As long as I'm making myself the center, as long as I'm trying to attract everyone to me, then I really haven't understood bhakti. Because bhakti means making Krishna the center and bringing everybody closer to Krishna, starting with myself. So it's just the opposite. It's like the difference between lust and love. Right? And Kaviraj Goswami, he says that love is like gold and lust is like iron. So they're both metals, but they're diametrically opposite. Okay, so before we can run off and follow in the footsteps of some advanced liberated soul in Vrindavan, we have to go step by step, right here in Knoxville or here in wherever we are, and get purified of that material, selfish contamination. Let's see what the next one is. Yeah, here we go. So therefore, go ahead.
Therefore, in the beginning, everyone should strictly follow the regulating principles of devotional service according to the injunctions of the scriptures and the spiritual master. Only after the stage of liberation from material contamination can one actually aspire to follow in the footsteps of the devotees in Vrindavan.
Yeah, if I prematurely try to follow in the footsteps of some resident of Vrindavan, it'll be a mockery. I will still twist his example and his advice around my material desires. I won't really get the benefit. It's premature. Okay, good. Now, let's see. Okay, so now we're going to really accelerate. We're going to get on the escalator back to Godhead and how to advancing from Shraddha up to Bhav. So what is Shraddha?
Faith.
Faith. Right, that's the beginning. And Shraddha, in the beginning, it just means like a real curiosity. Like somebody sees the devotees Harinam party, on a street corner. And instead of being put off by it, they might think, oh, this is interesting, this is attractive. So that means there's already some pious background to the person to be attracted to Krishna's devotees and not repulsed. Other people will see the same thing and they'll say, oh, these people are wasting their time. They're just singing and dancing in the street like sentimentalists. Show me the money. That's what they say, right? Show me the money. Or you were saying. Right? How much are you making when you're practicing? They just measure everything in terms of dollars and cents. Right? Okay, so from Shraddha, so that's faith. Later it matures as Nishtha, which means firm faith. All the way up to Bhav. So what's Bhav?
One level below that. Love of God.
Bhav. In this context, it means love, actually. It means strong, ecstatic love. And then there's a higher level than that even. It's prem. It means complete. There's no question of falling down from that platform. Whereas sometimes great rishis and yogis, they even attain bhav, and then what happened to Bharat Maharaj? He was in bhava, he was in love of God, and then what happened to him?
He got attracted by a deer.
A deer. He went, he left his kingdom, ostensibly to deepen his meditation on Krishna. But then he happened to see a deer who was calved by the mother, because who was roaring? A tiger was roaring, right?
Yes.
And the mother deer was jumping across the river, and the roar of the tiger completely mortified the mother deer, and she gave birth. She was pregnant, and then she gave birth to the deer, and then she died, right?
Yes, she died.
Yeah. She died, and the little deer, the fawn, survived. And then Bharat happened to see the whole thing, and he just took pity on the little calf, which was a nice sentiment. But then he overdid it. He just became totally fawn conscious. Yeah, he just became, and so when he passed away, he was just thinking of the deer, and he became a deer. But because at the same time he was such a good devotee, he was granted jati smara. He was granted the power to remember his past life. And so he was in a deer's body. Can you imagine this? Waking up in a deer's body, but being fully Krishna conscious. So, you wonder, what am I doing here, right? In this deer body. So then he sought out, in his deer birth, he sought out the association of great sages and devotees who were just discussing Krishna. And he would just eavesdrop on their conversations. So in his next life he became who? Jad Bharat, who remembered the previous lives and was determined not to get distracted like he did in the king's birth, and just practiced Jada Yoga, which means he feigned being dumb, deaf and dumb practically. That's another Leela. Okay, so here's an interesting example of how a devotee matures from initial faith to all the way up to love of God. And it's a really juicy example. That's no pun, or pun intended. So who wants to read this one? Oh, Cora. I'm neglecting you.
No.
All right. So can you read that?
By devotional service, only is one elevated to the transcendental planet Golok Vrindavan, and there also there is only devotional service. For the activities of devotional service, both in this world and in the spiritual world, are one and the same. Devotional service does not change. The example of mango can be given here. If one gets an unripe mango, it is still a mango, and when it is ripe, it remains the same mango, but it has become
more
tasteful and relishable. Similarly, there is devotional service performed according to the direction of the spiritual master and the injunctions and regulative principles of Shastras, and there is devotional service in the spiritual world rendered directly in association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But they are both the same. There is no change. The difference is that one stage is unripe and the other is ripe and more relishable.
So on the strength of that analogy, Prabhupada, when asked, he would be asked sometimes by the press, how many pure devotees are in your movement? And he would say, what? All of my devotees are pure devotees, in the sense that we're all on the path of pure devotion, but you might see that they're unripe. Now here's how it looks graphically. Here's the chart that I was thinking of. Progress toward pure love. Let's see, there's a couple more. Yeah, there we go. Sweeter. So there's the analogy is again to the mango. So we start out, here's the animal life. We start out here, and we're in total darkness, and we're not completely Krishna unconscious, because we don't have that facility yet. We can't even ask who we are. And then a higher birth is that we're in a human body, and we meet devotees, and then we get inspired to actually live the same life that they're living, and we surrender our life to Krishna, realizing that everything belongs to him anyway. And then, a little higher up, is sadhana bhakti, where we actually commit to vows and really being on the path. Now, let's halt there, because on the other side we're neglecting the analogy. So bitter mango starts with when we first come to the association of devotees, and maybe we don't know how to behave properly, or because we don't know much, or we have not much culture or training. So our association is maybe a little rough. So that's compared to being a bitter mango, very unripe, right? And then it goes a little sweeter up to bitter sour, and then sour, and then at the stage of when we're actually committing to follow the bhakti life, it becomes sweet, or sour sweet, and then sweet as we mature. And then above that, we start to awaken real love of God, ecstatic love. That's compared to sweeter. And then when we're fully mature in prema bhakti, pure love, that's really concentrated sweetness. Yeah. So that's at every stage. The mango is the mango, and the devotee is the devotee, but there are different stages of ripeness or maturity. Okay, good. Okay, well, we're already up to the review. How are we doing here? All right. So, in this lesson, we looked at... Okay. All right. Who would like to read? Your name again?
Akshay.
Akshay.
Yep.
Okay, that means Krishna can't be seen, is that it?
No, something that has no end.
No end. Oh. Okay.
Infinity.
Infinity. Wow. Okay. That's Krishna. Okay, Akshay Prabhu, you want to read that?
Sure. How to authentically connect with our topmost Uttamadhikari Guru, Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, that was really important. Sometimes people get really hung up on who I'm initiated by, because they tend to measure their own identity and their own self-esteem with the qualification of their initiating guru. It's a big thing, and therefore you find unripe disciples, fighting amongst other disciples of other gurus in our movement, saying, well, my guru is better than your guru. He's got more disciples. In fact, let me tell you a story about that. I was invited to Auckland, New Zealand to teach the Founder Acharya series, which I teach. And the person who invited me was the vice president of the temple. And then when I finally got there, he said, oh, I'm really glad you came, Sureshwar, because, we just had our Vyasa Puja celebration for Jayapataka Maharaj. We had a lot of disciples down there, because he used to be able to travel all over the world when he was healthier. And I said, "Well, that's nice. You had it. So what? So why are you anxious?" Because he said, because this devotee who was going to complain now, he was an older, more mature disciple of Jayapataka Swami, and he said he was really angry or very annoyed at his younger godbrothers and godsisters who had the same guru as him, Jayapataka Maharaj. But they insisted over his objections that they celebrate Jayapataka Maharaj's birthday on a grander scale than Prabhupada's, the founder Acharya, which is a complete breach of etiquette. But they didn't get it. And so when the older godbrother said to them, confronted them about this, he said, "Why do you want to do that? That's a complete offense to our founder Acharya." And their whole reason was, well, Prabhupada, he didn't even initiate 5,000 disciples. But Guru Maharaj, he's initiated, I think it was at that point, 30,000 plus. So it was just a numbers thing for them. Just because their guru had initiated more people, they were thinking he was on a higher platform than Prabhupada. So totally immature. So not recognizing that actually the founder Acharya is the foundational spiritual master, Shiksha Guru, of all generations of Hare Krishna devotees in the Hare Krishna movement that he founded. So that is there, it's available, if people will realize that fact and take advantage of it. And then we also looked at
The Guru's most essential instructions.
the first one is
Chanting.
16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra and
Associating with devotees.
associating with devotees, especially people who are more advanced. So we make advanced. And
3 stages of chanting Hare Krishna.
so what's the first stage?
Namapra.
No, not in terms. Yeah, that's right. Namabas. Okay, I'll give you that one. There's different. Let's go to the mango analogy. So what's the first stage? What's the mango? Yeah, it's bitter. Yeah, that's right, bitter. Yeah, and then we start to mature a little bit, and it gets bitter sour, and then sour, and then sour sweet, sweet, more sweet. Yeah, 3 stages of change. It's basically, break it down into 3s, then it's offensive stage, clearing stage, and pure stage. Yeah, there's 3 stages of chanting. And we also looked at
Becoming qualified to follow a resident of Vrindavan in competent devotional services.
and what's the main qualification to do that?
Get rid of the materialistic contamination.
Yeah, putting myself the center instead of Krishna. I mean, that's material consciousness in a nutshell, is to think of myself first. What's the first and great commandment that God said to Moses in the Old Testament?
Thou shalt not kill.
Not that the first. In terms of being God conscious, thou shalt.
Oh, thou shalt not have another god.
No, that's number 2.
That's number
Number 1 is. You see, I'm from a Judeo-Christian background, so I happen to know this. Thou shalt love thy God with all thy heart, soul, and mind. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. The Christians have an expression, and the expression is, I'm third. God's first, my neighbor's second, and I'm third. Yeah. Well, they say Jesus is first, but my neighbor is second, and I'm third. So that's another way of putting God in the center. It's good. All right, and
Advancing from simple faith to pure love of God.
yeah, and at every step, the key to that is associating with very advanced devotees. Doesn't just mean hanging out with people of our own level. There's a funny story that Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj used to tell. Now, who knows the story? Who can tell the story of the wedding party? Anybody know that story? No? I bet Radhika knows. Radhika, you know the wedding party story from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta? It's a wedding party, you know that story?
The makeup thing. He
No,
kept-
no, it wasn't the fair, that's another, we
Oh,
just
was
read the fair. Okay, so, this is a Bengali, like a story to, it's like a story to illustrate a point, a lesson. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told that once upon a time, a family was invited to a wedding, but the wedding was far down the Ganga. It was too far to walk, so they knew they had to take a boat. So they hired a man to take them down the Ganga. Because it was far, even by boat, it was like an overnight trip. So they told the men, okay, this is it's this far, and so when you get you wake, we're going to go to sleep. We're going to sleep. They started at night, right? You know the story now. Okay, so they took off, and they slept soundly, confident that the man was going in the right direction, that he was going to stop at the appropriate village where the wedding was. And dawn broke, and the sun started to rise, and then it got to a point where they could see each other, and then they started looking around, and they saw they were in the same place where they started. So they said, and the boatman didn't know either, because why? Why didn't he know that he was in the same place? Because he had forgotten to do what?
Undock.
He had forgotten to take up the anchor. He had an anchor anchoring the boat to the bottom of the Ganga. And so they were stuck in the same place, although they've been going all night. So Bhaktisiddhanta said, similarly, if we don't make a conscious effort to pull up the anchor of our material attachments, we can chant Hare Krishna for years and years and years, but if we're just doing it superficially, if we're mouthing the names, but we're not actually giving up our material attachments and getting more attached to Krishna, then really what we're doing is we're not going progress, we're going in circles. We're circling our attachments. So that's a real warning to us, that to not take the spiritual life superficially, because at the time of death, I might just be in the same spot. In fact, I'll tell you another story, bless you, another story that Krishna gave me a wake-up call about how attached I am to the history of my life in this body, right? I was a young man. This was 1978. I had been in the Hare Krishna movement for 8 years. So the BBT, where I was serving, they were pleased with my service, so they said, okay, we're going to send you to the Mayapur festival this year. So I said, oh, great. So I went to Vrindavan, I went to Mayapur, and it was great. In Mayapur, we went on parikramas, seeing holy places, and then one place we went to was the house of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, right across the Jalangi, which joins the Ganga, of course. And then we went up on, you could do, to this day, you can go in the house of Bhaktivinoda, you go upstairs on the veranda, you look across the Jalangi, and you can see what Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you can't see what he saw, but actually you can't, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur envisioned one day there will be an Adbhuta Mandir, an amazing, awesome, wonderful temple arising on the Gangetic plain, and the whole world will come to see this, and that's what's happening right now, actually. And then he also foresaw all the Videshis from all the countries of the world outside India, devotees coming to chant Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari, Hari Krishna. He saw this. That was his vision. He was such a visionary. So we went to the house, and then that was the last stop of the parikrama, and then I went down to the Jalangi, and it looked like it was pretty kind of low at that point. It wasn't very formidable river. So I thought, I'm not going to go on the boat across. I'm just going to swim it. I was all kind of buff, macho, young brahmachari, and I'm just going to swim it. Yeah, right. So then I started swimming. But what I didn't know was that in the middle of the river there are these treacherous currents. If you've ever been in the Ganga. And that happens almost every year during the Mayapur festival when everybody comes. Somebody is not paying attention and they drown in the Ganga. So anyway, and I'd heard the announcements, but I said, That's for sissies, right? I can do it. So I dive in and I start swimming. But actually I'm not a very strong swimmer. So I got to the middle of the Jalangi, and sure enough, all these currents started pulling me, and it's sped up, in the middle. And I started, going downstream. I started to get carried away by the Jalangi. But I was still fighting, right? And then the thought came to my mind, I'm not going to make it. I can't fight these currents. They're much stronger than I am. So at the critical moment, when I thought I was going to go under, something came to my mind. A previous impression. I told you this before. Okay, don't tell them the punchline. An impression from a previous time in my life, from 1965. See, I didn't join until 70, and there it was, 78. So it was 13 years before. What the impression was, it was a jingle from a chewing gum commercial for Wrigley Spearmint Gum. This is what came in my mind at the critical moment, because Krishna says in the Gita, whatever you're thinking of at the time of death, that you will attain. So what did I hear in my head as I was just about to go under? Hi ho, hey hey, chew your little troubles away. Chew Wrigley Spearmint Gum. It was an ad for chewing gum. Now somehow or other, I made it, gasping, practically half dead, to the shore. And then I thought, oh my God, this is what I was thinking of at the critical moment before I almost died. So it was Krishna telling me, you got a long way to go, buddy. If you're thinking of chewing gum commercials when you're about to kick the bucket, when you're about to go under, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know how I got on that, but it is advancing from simple faith to pure love of God. The fact is that I'm still more like that kid than I am like Rupa Goswami, which is very humbling realization, but it gives us inspiration to get more serious. Okay, and then from that we always go to the final picture. Yeah. Oh, this is a concluding quote. This is a good one. Who'd like to read a concluding quote? I forget your name, honey.
Ruchi.
Ruchi?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a nice name. You're pretty. Nam Ruchi, you got a taste. Ruchi Mataji, please, can you lead us in this?
Should we read the words together?
Oh, okay. We'll just do. Atat Shri Krishna Namadi Navade Graham Sevo Mukhe Jivadao Swayameva Swaradhyaya. Mother Ruchi.
Therefore, material senses cannot appreciate Krishna's holy name. Form, qualities, and pastimes. When a conditioned soul is awakened to Krishna consciousness and renders service by using his tongue to chant the Lord's holy name and taste the remnants of the Lord's food, the tongue is purified and one gradually comes to understand who Krishna really is.
Right, that's from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, 1, 2, 3, 34. Also, Rupa Goswami wrote that. So, I was distributing books at a college. This is way back. It must be 1972 or something. Again, young man. And I met a professor who was a total empiricist, only believed what she could see, hear, taste, smell with these very limited, as Prabhupada would say, blunt senses. And when I tried to explain Krishna, she just came back with sense data. That's all we have, sense data. In other words, I only believe what I can see, smell, touch. And as long as that's your paradigm, that's true. If that's all if you think that's all there is, then that's all that's going to be revealed to you, what you can perceive with your blunt material senses. So, but spiritual science is different because it depends on the supreme scientist who's living in our heart. And as he's pleased with our endeavor to practice spiritual science, he begins to reveal to us, the practitioners, his real nature. What his nama, his name, rupa, his form, his guna, his qualities, his leela, his adventures, his pastimes, are really all about. It's revealed knowledge, which sounds like hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo, pie in the sky to the materialist, but that, we say, that's just fanatically, that's unscientific. Make the bhakti experiment. Apply your senses to the bhakti path, bhakti science, and see if there isn't something else going on than material consciousness. Try to see that. So that's a very tried and true verse for devotees when we're trying to share Krishna consciousness. Yeah, you can't perceive the reality or the truth of Krishna with an eternally skeptical attitude. Skepticism is good, it's a sign of intelligence, but when it leads to an unscientific dismissal of higher consciousness, then it's no good. It's like this. Say I'm a little kid and I want to learn how to read, but I'm an utter skeptic, even at the age of 5 or 6, right? And then on the first day of, say, first grade, I remember this because I was in first grade in Willard School. Mrs. Hardiman was my teacher, and she was teaching us the alphabet. And she said, this is an A, this is a B, she was introducing us to the letters. And then, I went along because I was a little kid, submissive to the teacher. But say I was just the class clown, and I just wanted to dismiss the teacher. I wanted to make fun of the teacher. How do I know that's an A? How do I know that's a B? The doubting Thomas. So if that's the posture, if we don't at least theoretically accept that that's an A and that's a B and that's a C, we'll never learn how to read, right? Because we'll eternally be stuck in skepticism. Prabhupada would say skepticism, rascalism. He would also say skepticism is a sign of intelligence, but then there's come to a point where you have to realize the limits of your intelligence, and why not try out something that could lead to higher consciousness. Okay, so that's that famous verse from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I think Rupa Goswami is quoting Padma Purana there. I think ultimately it's from Padma Purana. Yeah. And there's the final image of Prabhupada, and I really like, there's something very endearing about Prabhupada's gesture and his expression there. He's just inviting us to go beyond our material life. And you can see he's tasting something higher. He's got the kartals. It's like I have kartals here. One time I was at New Vrindavan, and has anybody been to New Vrindavan? Prabhupada's Palace of Gold. So Prabhupada visited there 4 times, 1969, 72, 74, and 76. So in 72, when he was there, I happened to be there too. And Prabhupada was looking right at the deities, Sri Sri Radha Chandra. Are they here? I saw them at your place. Yeah, they're upstairs. And he was on his Vyasasana, his high seat, and he was looking right at the deities. And I was sitting right to Prabhupada's left. So say this is where Prabhupada's sitting and I'm here. So I was just looking right at Prabhupada the whole time. Sometimes I look at the deities, but basically I was totally enthralled, by Prabhupada. So he's chanting along with the devotees, and then sometimes I noticed Prabhupada would close his eyes and he would stop playing. So because sometimes I would fall asleep doing devotional activities, especially reading. When Prabhupada closed his eyes and he wasn't playing anymore, I thought Prabhupada was falling asleep. I was projecting my, very limited material onto Prabhupada. But then I noticed when Prabhupada would stop, he wouldn't, slump. He wouldn't he was just going rigid. He was going within. He was going internal. And he was tasting the name on a higher level because he was really with Radha and Krishna, Radha Vrindavan Chandra, and they were engaging in a deeper exchange. And then I kind of got that after a while. I said, oh my God, I'm projecting my limitations, my conditioning onto Prabhupada. Or Did I tell about Krishna book?
No.
Okay, so one more Prabhupada story about the Krishna book. Because the pure devotees' senses are totally absorbed in Krishna, the senses, the mind, the intelligence. So they're spiritualized. You know, we're still living in apparently a material body, but the body is totally in Krishna's service. So it's not like a conditioned body. So this is Janmashtami. This is Friday, September 1, 1972. And we've been fasting all day, because Prabhupada requires, he says, try to, right? It's better if you can fast. So in those days we all did. We were all younger, and we all were gung-ho, and we were fasting. But by the time midnight came around for the arti, the Janmashtami arti, because Krishna appeared at midnight in Kamsa's prison, we were totally famished and exhausted. And then after the arti at 12:30, we fully expected to break the fast. That's when you break the fast, right? So at 12:30, the conch blew at 12:25, and then by 12:30, then the Shringa prayers are over, and they were all like looking forward to breaking fast. And Prabhupada says, "So, where is Krishna book?" Prabhupada wants to hear about the advent of Lord Krishna. He wants to hear the Leela from the book that he wrote, it's a summary study of the 10th canon. So we're all looking at Prabhupada. So somebody fetches the book, right? And then there was sannyasis sitting in the middle, and they all had these dandas, these big tridandi sticks, 3-pointed tridandis. And Prabhupada asked them to pass the book around and start reading the Leela. So it starts at 12:30, right? So 12:30, 12:45, and you can see Prabhupada, as the reading goes, he's getting more and more awake, because he's really relishing the pastime of Krishna appearing, right? 12:40, 1 a.m., and the dandas start swaying a little bit, because and most of us are just against the wall. We're kind of like, we're just like trying to, and then sometimes we look at Prabhupada, and he's reacting to every line. He's really into the Leela. 1:15, 1:30. So by 1:30, everybody's practically on the ropes. We're like, and the dandas are like, 1:45. The dandas are like flat. It's like an EEG reading is flat. Everybody's brain dead. And so Prabhupada, he had been with his eyes half closed and then really responding to everything. And then he opens his eyes and he's surveying the wreckage, right, of our consciousness. And then Prabhupada says, I think you're becoming a little impatient. Take prasad. But we couldn't take prasad because we were wiped out. We were like finished. So we just, we sort of staggered away back to our bungalow, back to our sleeping bags. So, Atak Shri Krishna Namadi, if your senses are not that purified, if they're still pretty conditioned, then naturally you're going to react like that. You're going to just go to sleep, right, eventually. But the pure devotee, he's beyond material time and space and the limitations of the senses. That's why he didn't feel the jet lag. Or at least he didn't act like it, and he wasn't limited by jet lag as he traveled around the world. He would just pick up whatever the time was. He would, okay, it's time for this and that. So there's Srila Prabhupada. He's chanting Hare Krishna, but his chanting is not like my chanting. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, Nama kara bahir hoi, nama nahi hoi. Merely to mouth the external syllables of the holy name does not mean that one is actually chanting the holy name. The real holy name, Shuddhanam, is internal. It's about the state of how much I'm in love with Krishna. So he's tasting that at every moment. So he was always our role model. Even though we would fall asleep and couldn't keep up with him, and had a hard time with our vows and our rounds, we wanted to be like him. And he never gave up on us. He was very kind. You know, he never rejected us just because we would stumble and fall. He'd say, that's okay, pick yourselves up and keep going. Okay, it's 5:42. There are any comments or questions about what you heard? And I thank you for your patience, even though many of you just walked in from, did you know what was going on at all? Or could you sort of pick up the thread a little bit? Good.
It seems to be very difficult to
Practice makes perfect. Prabhupada's first visit to New Vrindavan in 1969, he was there 6 weeks. It was the first ISKCON attempt at a farm community. And Prabhupada loved it. He just said, I could stay here forever, but it would be sense gratification. I have a duty to go all over the world and spread, and he did. So he said, I haven't had milk like this in 50 years, because he was drinking the milk from Kalia the cow. She was a Jersey cow. And Jersey has rich milk. So he loved that. And then one day he was, there's pictures of this too, he's getting a massage by his assistant named Devananda. And you can see the picture, Prabhupada just has his lungi on, or gamsha even, just a gamsha. And before the massage, Devananda is getting the oil. I think there was, in the summer it was sesame oil, and in the winter it was mustard. So while Devananda is oiling up his hands, Prabhupada's just there in a gamsha, and he starts strumming on his rib cage. And it sounded just like a mridanga. Prabhupada just strumming, And Devananda's like looking at Prabhupada and saying, Prabhupada, how did you learn how to do that? Practice. So it's similar. I mean, love of Krishna is there. It's dormant. It just has to be invoked by the practices of bhakti. Just like a child knows the capacity to walk is there, it just has to be invoked by practice. So it might seem impossible, but it's not. With the guidance of a pure devotee, he can cut through all that junk. Although Prabhupada, he would make fun of us sometimes. He would say, trying to purify you people is like scrubbing coal. The more you scrub coal, it's just black, it's the same. So he would encourage us. He would say, you can do it. Long before Nike said, just do it, Prabhupada said, just do it. But he would also, remind us of how we had to, apply ourselves better by saying, like scrubbing coal. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Tomorrow we're going to do the final lesson. It's from 4 to 6, and it's called The Highest Love. It's really sweet. It's the goal. It's where we want to go. Are you ready to take prasad? Yeah?
Nobody wants to go to.
Nobody wants to go.
So this 24 hours thing, Prabhu, like that sounded like means, like how can that be like? It said like like the essence of all advice that was in text 8.
Yes.
It's like 24.
Should we go back to that? Let's
Yes,
go back to that slide. Yeah, that's the verse, right? Yeah, there it is. The essence. So what about that?
So it's
The essence
like,
of all advice. Read that.
Don't answer. The sense of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day.
Now see, that's not in the Sanskrit. But when Prabhupada gives these translations, he puts his own spin on it, so to make sure we get it.
Mm-hmm.
You'll see that a lot. But he puts that in there just to let us know that this is the goal. Okay, go ahead.
So the essence of all advice is that one should utilize one's full time, 24 hours a day, in nicely chanting and remembering the Lord's divine name, transcendental form, qualities and eternal pastimes, and thereby gradually engaging one's tongue and mind. In this way, one should reside in Braj, Golok, Vrindavan Dham, and serve Krishna under the guidance of devotees. One should follow in the footsteps of the Lord's beloved devotees who are deeply attached to his devotional service.
And then the next two slides are a kind of balance to that by saying you can't really go to Braj, until you're purified enough to do that. Otherwise, it'll be a cheap invitation. So, what was your question?
So, probably the 24 hours, like, can you little bit put it?
Okay, well, I tell you, at that same New Vrindavan visit in 72, Prabhupada told us that if you practice well enough, you can think of Krishna you can dream of Krishna, even in your dreams. So even when we're resting, if we're dreaming of Krishna, we're actually in reality. We're not just in a dreamland. Yeah, and Prabhupada's personal assistants who tended him said that's what it was like when Prabhupada whether he was going to sleep or when he would wake up, he was fully alert. It wasn't like the way I wake up in the morning, hitting or the snooze, whatever. Yeah, it wasn't that. Where I sort of climb out of the mode of ignorance gradually, and then after some time I'm awake. But it was like Prabhupada wake up like this. He was with Krishna while he was dreaming, and he was with Krishna while he was awake. And then the servant would say, and the uncanny thing was that very often the thing he had been talking about just before he went to sleep, he was just picking up the sentence. There was no break. Ahaituki apratihata. No selfish motive, no hidden agenda, and with no uninterrupted. That's the goal. So it just, because we have faith that we are actually deep down, maybe deep down, we have love of Krishna. We have faith that we can get to that point because it's who we are. We're not trying to become something we're not. We're just trying to get rid of the conditioning, the ignorance that's been with us for eons, since time immemorial. So we can't be discouraged.
Well, he's always planning, like Prabhupada, how to preach, how to
Yeah, there's always something to look forward to, and Prabhupada would say, Krishna consciousness is the bright side of life. We're so much, this is hopeful life, whereas whatever we do in the material world, if we're not doing it in the service of the Lord, we're ultimately just, setting ourselves up for a big disappointment. Because everything ends in old age, disease, and death. That's if you're lucky, right? You might die younger like that. So, Krishna consciousness means to enter into reality even before death. Pratyaksha bhagamam dhamyam. It is the perfection of religion because it gives, Krishna says in the Gita, direct perception of the self by realization. You can be with Krishna face to face, eye to eye, even before you leave this body. That's rare, but at least by the time death does claim our bodies, hopefully we'll be conscious of it and not of the regular spirit of gum.
Prabhu, I have one question.
Yeah.
The very next sentence where it says, in this way one should reside in Vraja, Golok Vrindavan Dham.
Right.
So
that's internal. That's not a physical. It is a place, that tract of land, 90 miles southeast of Delhi. But the real Vrindavan is not dependent on where one is physically, geographically. Yeah, the real Vrindavan, and Krishna says this in the Padma Purana. How does it start? Nahang tishtami vaikunte, yoginam hridayeshuva, tatra gayanti narada. I forget the last line. But Krishna says, "O Narada Muni, I am not in the heart of the yogis," and of course he is, but he's making a point here. I am not in the heart of the yogis. Naham tishtami, I'm not in Vaikuntha. I am Naham tishtami Vaikunte. I'm not in Vaikuntha, but of course he is. Yogi nam hridayeshuva, nor am I in the heart of the yogis. But he is, but he's making a point here. So where am I? Tatra gayanti narada. Wherever my devotees are singing my holy names, that's where I am. So that's a state of consciousness. It doesn't matter if one's in Pennsylvania or in Brudge or in Mayapur. And did you know that that's why we had a saintly devotee in our movement who passed away from cancer in 2005, June, and he chose not to pass away in the Dham in India. Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he chose to pass away at Gita Nagari in Juniata County, Pennsylvania, surrounded by loving devotees. And because he was making a statement that it doesn't really matter where you are geographically. It's all about your consciousness, and that's what Krishna's appreciating. And in his last days, I'll never forget this, I wasn't there, but Radhanath Swami stayed with him for the last 6 weeks. And you know Radhanath Swami, everybody's pulling him to go all over the world, but he just, on the request of Bhakti Tirtha, he just canceled all other engagements. He was by his bedside, and the cancer was really intense, the pain. So Radhanath Swami at one point asked Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, how are you doing? In other words, physically and spiritually, are you okay? While he could still talk. And Bhakti Tirtha's famous reply was, and this was when the pain was really off the charts too, he said, it doesn't get any better than this. And he meant it. Because while his body was racked with pain, he was having some kind of vision or exchange with Krishna. Krishna was so much appreciating him and protecting him and bringing him to him that he left in total Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So that was very encouraging too. That was another lesson to learn, just how he passed away, what to speak of, where he was. So, we can't give up. Here I am, 49 years, next July in the Hare Krishna movement, and I'm still attached to baseball? The Beatles? Or what else? You name it.
Sports.
Sports.
Politics.
But I'm not giving up. I ain't going nowhere. I ain't giving up. Because where am I going to go anyway? Prabhupada's given me a reason to live. Some transcendent purpose to my life and a sweet path. That's so much on the bright side, Prabhupada would say. There's no future in material life. Why not try for Krishna Bhakti? Okay, are we ready now? Okay, so thanks for coming, and if you can, come tomorrow. It's the highest love, the last lesson. It's really good. I just finished refining it. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. I'll unplug.